Welcome to the 301 Podcast, the interview podcast for the hottest up-and-coming entrepreneurs, artists, and creators. Real, authentic, and inspiring. And here is your host, Marcus Engel. Let's get it started in 301.
Welcome back to the 301 Podcast, and today we are here with Vincent Hu. He is the founder of Imminence, and he helps creatives and coaches scale their businesses. And we are talking today about a very interesting journey about self-reinvention. Vincent, welcome to the 301 Podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you for inviting me.
When we had a call, you said like a really interesting sentence, and it was really stuck with me for a while.
Tell me.
You said, I'm just a 4-year-old boy with a dream living in a grown-up body. What does kind of like that younger version of yourself represent?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think the way that I always like to introduce myself, on the one hand, you're like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business person. But I always like to lead first, but hey, I'm just a human. So I think I always relate back to the 4-year-old me, because I think one of the youngest memories I have from my youth is me being 4-year-old, going to my mom on a rainy day when my father was working outside of the city. And she was quite scared. My sister was alone with her, and we heard knocking on the door. And she was like, Vince, don't go, what's happening? And I went, no, Mom, let me go check it out. For me, I lead by that, because to me, that always represented bravery and a feeling of, hey, I can conquer the world if I can say it loudly. So that's what it represents to me.
Super cool. Also, like you grew up, you told me in our intro call that we had that you grew up with quite successful parents. Your father was a doctor, your mom was an author for children's books. What kind of values have they kind of like passed on to you?
That's also a really good question. Damn, I'm loving where we're going with this. So for me, I think a bit of intro and background that's also relevant to share with that is I am originally born from Suriname. That's my home country. It's a beautiful country. We used to be a colony of the Dutch, hence I'm here in Amsterdam, Netherlands. I actually came to study a while back. And for me, with my parents, I think they always served very good role models for me. I don't I know not everyone is as fortunate to get a family or parents that truly show them love and care, but I do want to give my parents credit where credit is due. I've always seen my mother as such a courageous and creative human. She's literally a children's book writer. And for as long as I have memories, the only thing that I can hear about my mom is her saying, help people, do good, help others. And for my father as well, he always represented to me resilience, determination, and I'd say wisdom in a way. My father was always wise. He was always composed. So I'd like to say I've gotten pretty good role models in that.
And what kind of children's book did she write? Like, is it then, like, how can I imagine this also?
Of course. So her book was actually called, her flagship series called Lena and Yopi. In fact, let me tell you how that happened. As kids, I like to think I have a very imaginative imagination. I would always ask my mom, tell me a story. So she came up one day and she said, hey, okay, there were these two rats, Lena, or mice. They were called Lena and Yopi. And it's basically just a story of how they lived in this house of a baker, and they would go on their little adventures to steal the bread or go and snack, in their journey. And then there was this cat. So basically it's stories for children, and she's spread her age range over time, but it's stories for children who are really trying to learn a language, become imaginative, and see the world in a positive light. And each of the stories always have a positive message with them. So that's how you can imagine it. She's had a range of books from, like in this case, for, I guess you say, kindergartners to 6 years old, but also for babies and now also for teenagers.
Cool values that like she also passed on.
Very
and
certain.
Did you also co-create with her? Like, did she use you also kind of like to...
I think it was me telling her, there's this book called, in Suriname, or in Dutch, it's kakak, the kakkerlak meaning the cockroach, and the grandma. There was this story of a cockroach and a grandma trying to kill the cockroach, not like literally kill, but more like get rid of it, in that sense, because it is a children's book in that sense. But I always told my mom, I want to tell me a story. And there was, I don't know why, but I said, there's a kakkerlak, and she started telling it that way. Okay. So yeah, it's a pretty fun way. I guess co-creation is really how it came together. Also with my little sister, who I think worth mentioning here as well. She's transgender. Her name's Jade Hu. She is coming really big in this community here in Amsterdam as well, and in the Netherlands in the trans community. And my mom co-created a book, also Lena Yopi series, together with her. So it's always been this fun, iterative journey of working together to tell stories.
Cool. We will definitely also link the books in the show notes. So if anyone wants to read them and wants to check them out, then they can do that. Like, I think if I look at you, like the way the content that you put out, like the way you work, like I would really say that you're like really kind of like a creative at heart. You like, I mean, we geeked out for the cameras and the settings and all this kind of stuff. Do you think that is kind of rooted also in this like early involvement into kind of storytelling and like being told many stories? Because of course, every story, I mean, at least I can really remember because my parents also always read for us.
That's lovely, yeah.
Kind of like you as a child, you develop so crazy skills of like imagining how those people look like, you know, like you kind of like picture them, you give them features, you can really kind of like play around. And I think nowadays, a lot of times the characters are just there, you know. I think
they don't
like
have any
Pepper
depth
Woods and all those kind of like comics that they maybe watch on an iPad or they watch on a whatever TV screen or something like this. That is like, that's a character, that's how they look like and they recognize it, but they don't kind of develop them themselves in a way because they only have a story. Would you say that this was part of like your early creative development, or would you say like I don't know if that helped, it's just me, I'm just a creative?
No, I think whenever I speak to my mom and dad, I like to make a joke about it. I'm like, I got creativity from mom, and I'd say I got, now I'm getting older, my calm and I'd say patience from my father. But most certainly, I think a really important thing in our upbringing is the fact that we were not only shown through examples that we could be creative, we were encouraged to be creative. So as a kid, I would draw, I would literally pick up a guitar and start playing it. My father had one. I would try all kinds of things because it felt so intuitively. I think I naturally do have a knack for creativity, and I'd say a pretty loud inner world that just loves expressing itself. And therefore, having that stimulation and seeing my mom and my father do it. Like, in fact, we're kind of a musician's family. My mom she just naturally said, hey, you know what? I'm going to pick up a saxophone and I'm going to be really good at it. So my mom and dad, now that we're not in the house anymore, because we've already moved out, they're just literally playing music. So creativity was always encouraged. And I do think that is a big reason why I've always been creative in my endeavors, because it was so natural to be able to express that.
I mean, growing up in a Asian household, I think it's also not like let's say half Asian household.
Yeah.
It's also not a secret that I think Asian like parents are mostly much more strict and kind of like have very high expectations to their children to perform, to push. Your dad being a doctor, I am curious, like, how was the expectation kind of like towards you? Because today you are super successful. You had an interesting journey in between that we're going to talk in a bit about it. But like, how from like kind of like childhood, like early on, like how high was the pressure for you to kind of perform and to be on your task?
That's a good question. I'd say that looking at it objectively now, it wasn't really high at all. At least my parents, for as long as I can remember, there was a point when we were younger. I remember this very clearly. So I think this is more looking at Suriname and the culture as a whole within the country as an opposition to looking at within the household, right? So I'll kind of separate it that way. I'd say from a perspective of us growing up in Suriname, being a rather small country, and coming from a family where my father's a doctor, I'd say I did feel an external kind of pressure where it's like, okay, you got to do well. Now, naturally, I feel like because I've been encouraged creatively to test, I feel like I've naturally had this ability to, okay, I'm really good at what I do. My mom would always encourage me and my sister, you two have a lot of talent, you're very good. So naturally, if you believe that, you start doing it. So I'd say there always has been a skill within me to pick up skills and learn and get good grades naturally. I wouldn't say that my parents really pushed us in that traditional sense, because we've always, given the fact that my mom is a children's book writer, we've always had this freedom to be. I think this also relates to the fact that my sister is transgender. She has the right to be who she is. And it's a very beautiful relationship we've built within the family. My mom, my dad, my sister and I included. I wouldn't say that we were pushed necessarily, other than I had my own inner thing pushing me. There was this one moment with my mother, and I remember that's when we really grew together when I was 8 or 9. My mom was like, I want you to do your best. And I felt really pressured by it. But after we spoke about it and I told Mom, I don't feel like I'm doing this because I want to do it. I'm being pushed. She realized that. And from that moment onward, I was always free to explore and do the best I could, which only enforced me to go, hey, I actually want to give it my best. Yeah.
There was also like a time in your life that things became a little bit more difficult. Like you talk online about it. We also talked in our intro call a little bit about it, that taking you back to the year where you turned 11 or where you were 11 years old. Some kind of family trauma unfolded a little bit, which really, I think, defines a lot who you are today.
Certainly.
And also has like rippling effects on kind of years to come after that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take us maybe back to that moment and what happened?
To bring you guys back a little bit, as I described that 4-year-old me, brave, curious, ready to take on the world. I come from a world of a lot of love within my family, but I'd say the extended family from my father's side, I wouldn't say in my youth I really perceived them as to be the most honest and truthful people. Now, I'm saying this with a lot of consideration here. I'm not trying to say anyone is necessarily bad in that way. People have their reasons for doing this, but from my experience and what truly did happen in our family, let's just say they weren't the most honest. If I could frame it this way, and this is the 3 things I really dislike in life, it's dishonesty, injustice, and what's the word for this in English? Dishonesty, injustice, and disrespect. I came to the world being, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to change the world, I'm going to do good. But every time I saw my family, we were slowly being pushed away. Now, I didn't fully understand why that was. Of course, you're a kid, you have no idea, and you just want to give the world love. And there was a point when I was 11 years old. To run a lot of backstory, my sister kept causing trouble in the household. My family, we were going to parties with my cousins a lot, but we were always kind of the black sheep. And I finally got a BlackBerry, like that phone with the buttons and everything, and the bing, bing, bing. I could finally talk to my family, who I didn't really speak to as much back then. I was so happy to speak to them. That 4-year-old kid who was ready to bring people together. I talked to my sister and my family going, hey, what's been going on? Why are we separated? Why don't you come back home, me to my sister? And what I experienced back then, instead of what felt like my sister really being there to listen to me, she tried, I'll frame it as, pushing it on me that my father and my mother are bad people, that they're not treating her right. I've seen my mom and dad every single day of my life. I've seen my father wake up every morning at 5, tired sometimes, to wake me and my sister up, to take us to school. He would always prepare our sandwiches. He would always get us our cereals before we got started. So how can you tell me that when it's your father? I got so angry when she was saying these things about my parents. Me being me, brave, and I don't care about the world, I called her a bitch. I was that 11-year-old. You don't say that about my parents. Now, in an attempt to just connect, the opposite happened. I got into a fight with my sister. And that completely blew up. Because instead of her listening to me and coming to the point, she went to the family, she told them what I said. And one small thing led to a gigantic explosion. Inside of the group chat, I was being called stupid, retarded, this, all these words that were so hateful. And that 4-year-old kid who just said, I'm going to do good one day, I was completely silenced. The people who I love most, by me being honest, going up to them, I felt like I had no right to be. It was like literally sitting on my bed as I am right now, texting on a phone as an 11-year-old kid. Everything I've believed, my hopes and dreams just shattered, like demons screaming at me. And the next thing I know, my extended family just disappeared. And that was incredibly tough for me because I've been given so much positivity, so much love, so much, you're talented, you're good. And everything just kind of blew up. So I, in short, from that moment on, found it so difficult to believe in myself. How do you, as an 11-year-old kid who just wants to do good in this world and believes that there's good change, go to the people you love most, try to be honest, try to connect, and by being honest and showing your true heart, you get stabbed and hurt.
You then, let's say, you had like a tough childhood or also like adolescence, basically in that sense, like not really connecting with yourself. You were then 18 years old. You moved to the Netherlands.
Yeah, the natural path for Surinamese people who were in a privileged position was, hey, okay, let's go study. Yeah. Well, okay, it was. But there was one thing that happened when I was 16. I remember I was and this kind of sets the motion for everything that's to come today. I was in a really bad space. And even though my parents didn't understand what was going on, something like trauma and mental health back then in Suriname wasn't really something we talk about. That was right before social media blew up and everyone started talking about mental health. My mother showed me a book called The Secret. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I don't know.
It's about the law of attraction. My mother saw, hey, this kid needs help. I don't know what I can do for him. She tried in so many ways. And so she gave me this book that was about if you think and if you believe, you can achieve. Essentially, you can create. That set in motion a question in myself, because for the longest time, I asked myself, why do I have to be like this? Why am I not happy? And I started searching for answers, and that set a chain of events that got me to who I am today. I think that's worth mentioning as well.
And sorry, like maybe I missed it, but was it then like kind of like a significant like
yes
moment when you were like 16, or was it then just like a
No, it was certainly a significant moment, because you have to, from a perspective of trying to like explain the reality of what I lived through, it was so, without me realizing it, because I have a good family, we're quite wealthy, I'm getting good grades. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? That was the reality, right? And she presented me a book called The Secret that talked about the law of attraction, how you can truly find peace within yourself, happiness, build a life that you've always wanted. And if you remember 2015-16, Instagram was a thing, and then everyone had all these cars and all these cool things online, and you're like, there's no way I can't do that, right? And when she introduced that book to me, essentially what really happened is that I was introduced to the idea that I can maybe, possibly, truly connect with that desire that my young self always wanted. It never faded, right? But it just kind of was masked. That book set in motion. I started seeing Gary Vee, as you're familiar with, and all these other entrepreneurs doing things. And I thought, why not me? And that's a question that I've been asking myself for the past 16 back then, 9 years, that kind of has now led to where I am today.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you started studying then, like you came to the Netherlands?
Yes, I came to the Netherlands to start studying. I did international business. No, actually, I wanted to be a doctor, funny enough,
Okay.
because I was so inspired by my father. He's like helping people, and I was a big nerd for fitness and health, and I was going to the gym a lot, so I liked the health aspect of life. Now, little did I know I did not like studying the health aspect of life. In 17, I went to the Netherlands for an exam to become a doctor, but deep down, I realized I didn't like it at all. I didn't really put my heart and soul into it. So when I finished, when I was about to finish high school at 18, I was like, I didn't pass it. I was like, oh, that's fine. I'm going to do health sciences. So I came to the Netherlands, and that's when something happened. All that pent up anger, rage, trauma, as I can frame it that way, everything that predefined me in Suriname, I almost developed a hatred for my own country. It was no longer there because I was in a new country. I can do anything, right? So I did health sciences just for the year. I said to my father, I really want to study. I think I'm going to do health sciences. Or maybe I'll try medicine again. But that year, I was very inspired by creativity. YouTubers. I don't know if you know that time when Gymshark started rising, Alpha Lead, those American fitness YouTubers. I watched a lot of that content. Once again, I don't know. I loved it as a kid, right? So I told my father, hey, what if I get a camera? I think I can become the next big YouTuber. So I'm very grateful and very privileged. My father said, give it a try. My father has always had this belief in me that I can't describe it. Like, I trust you're going to do good one day. And I trust that no matter what you're navigating, you'll be fine. So I got a camera, and that's when it all started. Picked up a camera, Sony a6300, by the way.
Nice.
Started doing photography, filming. And while I was studying, I was exposed to the world of entrepreneurship, earning money through your own craft. And for a moment, I was like, this all makes sense. All of these years were for this. I can finally be this. So that's how I got into cameras, actually. I started off freelancing during my time studying. I picked up a camera. I loved it. And at one point, I went from vlogging to, hey, I can render services as a videographer and photographer. And that's where I picked up my creative thing. In fact, I remember speaking to my mom on the phone one day when I just started. I said, Mom, I understand why I like this. I can finally make people feel something through photography and videography, something of an emotion that others can't naturally connect with. Me, again, connecting with my young self and the desire to help others. That's kind of how it went. And at one point, it was, I think, 2021. And this is really where the arc started, the redemption arc, if I can frame it that way. And I'm going to be quite loud with it. I do find it a very part of my story and who I am today and what my mission is these days. I saw a fair amount of success with it. Started doing videography services. Didn't build a gigantic business, but, I was having fun while studying. And then COVID hit. And this is a very significant moment for a lot of people in their lives. When COVID struck, as I can frame it, if you remember all these things that happened throughout my journey, I put up all these masks. I started becoming super fit, going to the gym, got really good at photography, videography. I was like a star in my own world. And it was all just an illusion, a mask to feel better about the emptiness inside of me. I don't want to be dramatic about it, but that is really how I experienced it. And then COVID hit. I was in a relationship back then, and I was finishing my studies, and suddenly all the masks that I kept up, they just came off. I couldn't go outside. Well, I could go outside, but I wasn't too confronted by the fear back then of all these things on the unknown. I couldn't go to the gym because it was closed. Everything that I did for myself to make myself feel good about myself, it faded away. And then I was left with myself. And oh, did I fail myself. Still remember being in my room, and instead of actually just sitting with my own feelings, being present and asking, hey, who am I? Hiding away, addicted to video games, just numbing my brain, pornography, endless masturbation. These are things that are quite embarrassing to say out loud, but I do find it important to show the truth of what was. I was confronted by myself. And that kept on going during the times in COVID. It kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. My relationship back then kept going down and down and down and down. It was long distance as well, mind you. And at one point, it came to a big climax. COVID was almost over. No, we didn't know that back then. And I had a life-altering experience, as I like to call it, whereby I actually failed my thesis. I was invited to do an internship as a content creator, and I was really happy. It was the entrepreneurship internship. So, okay, I get a chance to build something again. I'm excited for it, to learn a lot. And what I was left doing was shooting videos or filling boxes of alcohol. That was a very underwhelming experience. I did not have a positive time at the internship, and I felt so fucked over. I felt so overwhelmed, and all these things came up that at one point I failed my thesis and I exploded. Everything that happened back when I was 11, all of that built up, pent up rage, trauma, all of that just came up, and I basically did the one thing that I have regret to today. I went against myself. I lied to young Vince. I lied to that 4-year-old kid who was so happy to serve the world. And the one thing that I am very struck by, I cheated on Max. In all this rage, frustration, it's not just about the fact that I did that, which was already a horrible experience. The inner world, the only way I could feel worthy of myself as a human, as a man, was by doing that. I was literally confronted by a mirror. I was confronted by myself. Everything that I've told myself, my mom, my whole life leading up to this, I'm going to make a good change in the world. And I couldn't even succeed at being there for myself. And that moment really just shifted a lot for me, because I had to be confronted by who I was, something that I couldn't do before. And when I looked at myself in that moment, I just thought, what the fuck have you become? It's tough.
Something needs to change.
Yeah.
And like because I think like one of the life mottos that you said, like you have is kind of like this dishonesty. You hate dishonesty.
Yeah, I did everything
injustice and disrespect, right? So first of all, I have to say, like I find it super brave of you, like to also speak very openly about it, because I think there's many men that would not even make this part of their like journey and their experience. So first of all, like really, really, very brave.
Thank
I
you.
think. So you're still the brave 4-year-old
I'm keeping honest
exactly.
there.
But it kind of like then you hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Like you. I mean, you.
How
failed.
does that lead to here, basically?
Yeah,
right?
it's like you failed the thesis, the relationship
Yeah.
broke, you cheated. Like, how were like those kind of defining moments after that? Because of course you betrayed everything that you
That
kind of
I stood
believed
for.
in yourself. But you also have that trauma of like the childhood, right? That kind of keeps on like building up, not being able to kind of like have the validation, looking inside of the mirror. But of course, with those actions, like that doesn't change. But
No,
like,
it
what
lives in you. in a
yeah,
way.
exactly. And
That
it makes
was-
it even worse, right?
Yeah.
But what did you then do kind of like to rebuild yourself? Like, was there like a defining moment that you can really look back that you said like, that was the day that I decided to say like,
Yeah.
it needs to stop?
I remember the moment I got back home after that happened. I went to my room. My aunt was visiting. My sister saw me just walking to my room like a torpedo. And I sat down and I just started weeping, crying like crazy. I was like, and it sounds ridiculous, right? You go ahead and do something like that. Why are you playing the victim of it, almost in a way? And for a long time, I was so confused in all of this. Like, what the fuck's going on with me? Why is it overcoming me? And at that point, and it is really, looking back at it, it's so not even embarrassing, it's so ridiculous to even say that out loud, because I was in control of those actions all those times, right? So I remember sitting down that same bed where I, as a child, was traumatized, sitting down crying at it, and my sister came to me, she's like, what the fuck's going on with you? And I just looked at her and said, I'm done with this shit. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. She's like, what are you talking about? I told her what happened. She's like, you did what? So I said, you know what? I'm done with life. I'm over. Like, I didn't say it out loud because I was so scared of the thought, but I was basically saying, I am killing myself. Because why the fuck do I have to, a child with so much hope, so much light, I'm brave, I'm curious, I'm going to change the world, I'm courageous, to look at myself and go, that's who you are. Now, I had a talk with my sister when she came to my room. She looked at me, she went, what the fuck did you say? Are you out of your mind? She looked at me and went, Vincent, you're not living for yourself here. I need you here. We all need you here. What the fuck's wrong with you? And I was confronted by my sister, and I'm so thankful. I call her my mirror, literally, because she came up to me. She didn't sit there and sympathize. She just said, you can be better. And for a second there, I think what happened is I was reminded of young me. I make it look all like a movie, but it was a really tragic moment. I'm not even going to lie. But that moment, I had to make a decision. I said, okay, Vincent, and this is a tattoo representing that moment. I don't know if it's visible. It represents that mirror. As a child, when I was young, I would go into the bathroom, which is next to my room, and there was light shining on my face. It was like kind of like crossing my head. One side was dark, one side was light. And I could not recognize the dark side. It felt like a demon being there. I was reminded of that moment, and I said, okay, I can either continue living this pathetic life when my parents have worked so hard, everyone around me has always done their best, and I just fucking give it up, and I fall to exactly what was around me before, the disrespect, or I finally own up to myself and I say, Vincent, I'm here for you again. And I made that decision. It was probably the toughest decision, not necessarily making it, but what came after. And I think that really was a defining point where I said, okay, either I just give up or I finally do right.
Yeah. And what kind of, because of course, like saying it is one thing, but like
doing it.
What kind of actions like did you, like what did you do to kind of like push yourself out of that rut?
Yeah, it was tough. And looking back, it's almost crazy to see how fast it went, because that was literally 3 to 4 years ago. First thing I did, I looked at my body and I said, you look pathetic. Honestly, it was hate. It was this deep self-hate for myself for a long time, like this, what the fuck's wrong with you type of hate, that I needed to push myself out of it, right? Because how can I keep moving if I'm just okay with everything, complacent? So the first thing I did, unironically, and it's going to sound crazy, I went on my winter arc, gymming, going back and finally getting some self-worth. I think the real thing I could say here is I started working on my self-worth. What is self-worth? It's a very broad concept, right? But I needed to earn back my confidence. So I started working on me. I started learning. This is where growth became my number one word. Kaizen, you're familiar with the term, 1% better every day. I thought if I can just go and look at myself in the mirror that I was so scared to confront and look at myself every day to take one step, what would happen? So I went back to the Netherlands. I was actually in Suriname when this happened. So it kind of was like, I didn't mention that, but I went back home and I kind of like re-triggered the trigger, and it was just kind of like gigantic explosion. So I did the one thing that I could control for myself. Said, okay, I can take control of my body. So I started working out. But this time it wasn't to feed an empty hole. It was because I believe I can do better there. I started doing that. I went to the Netherlands. I finished my thesis. I actually succeeded with a 9 of a grade, which, I mean, looking back, it was kind of arbitrary because I didn't really use much of it. But the fact that I was able to do that, I started taking control of myself every single day. That's where structure came into my life. How can I reclaim myself? I started reading books. Stoicism, in fact, Marcus Aurelius, I think I mentioned this. I started reading about Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius, philosophy, all these things to make sense of who I was. And I think that was one of the toughest periods because regret was really big. I like to describe regret as this emotion. Guilt is you did something wrong, but regret is, I like to think, how do I frame this? When you make mistakes throughout life, a mistake is a mistake because you did not know any better, right? Like I made a mistake, okay, I did not know the information back then. I had deep regret because the thing that really stuck with me for a long time, and it does still live in me, it's you knew better. you were talking to yourself in that moment saying, don't do it, bro. Don't fucking do it, bro. And you did it anyway. So I had to literally go into an uphill fight against myself, like looking at myself, looking down at who I was, like, you despicable piece of shit. But I kind of pushed through it. It's like how the philosophy of David Goggins, if you're familiar with, I really resonated with that, because deep down, every time I looked at myself in the mirror, I just saw a pathetic loser. But at the same time, I was like, I'm so much more than this. So I just push. It was literally a raw battle in my own head. And eventually I started getting momentum. I went from having no proof that I'm good because I did all these things to, like I said, I started working out. I started seeing progression in myself. I started reading, I started learning. My grades started improving. I started getting back into business. And that's where it all shifted. I started seeing people who I worked with smile. Conversations I had, the qualities improved. And slowly I started picking myself back up from there. But it was very tough.
Do you still have those days like nowadays that like, because in the end, like, it's like a twofold question. Like one part of it want to ask, like, do you ever think that
go ahead, just ask it.
That kind of feeling will go away? Because in the end, you've done it, and you will always have done it. Like, I think, you know, it's not something that you can
undo. You can't
undo.
I think that's a great one, because for a long time I was looking for a blank slate. I remember the first year after that happened, it was just like, how do I forget it? How do I do it? I was constantly defining myself by that, right? And so like I was stuck in this ever self-proving loop. Like, I have to prove to myself. The answer is going to be vague because I don't know how anyone else would experience it. But I think the best way I could describe it is, does it haunt me? Not anymore. Because I learned to accept that was me. But at the same time, I feel like if I could frame it loosely, I am aware of the worst version of me, the absolute most despicable fucking piece of shit human that I was, if I could frame it that way. And I'm saying it quite rough because that's how I experienced it. And at the same time, I'm aware of the best version of myself. And every day I wake up, I have a choice. It's a weird way to frame it, but I really perceive existence like that. It's like I can wake up and be him, or I could wake up and do good. And the way that I've found to make peace with this is quite literally to wake up and say, I'm not going to be you today. Do I do it perfectly every day? No, not at all. I make a lot of mistakes. I do dumb shit. Not dumb shit in a bad context or anything, because I've really disciplined myself to keep true to my word, because truth and honesty with yourself is the most important thing at the end of the day. But what I would say is that when I get up, it's like, I'm going to choose to do good. And over time, you start stacking wins. You start building confidence. Confidence in that sense, meaning I kept my promises to myself. And there are a lot of moments where I look back and I get this feeling come up, and it's just like, fuck. But I think I found my way of living with it, which is the inner voice that I've developed, and there's no way it goes away. And I'm happy it doesn't.
Do you think that trauma makes better entrepreneurs?
Oh, wow. Yes and no. I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. That shit is hell. Like, I don't know how I do know how I overcame this, because that's just me. That's 4-year-old me saying, nah, bro. But I literally could have just ended it. I had a conversation with my mom about it, and she was so scared when I told her. She started crying. She was like, what's going on? I don't think necessarily that trauma has to happen to anyone to be a good human, because I think that's a very flawed way of thinking. Because like, you don't have to make these mistakes. You don't have to regret decisions. You don't have to live with remorse and self-hatred to be good. I think what it does allow you is to experience immense difficulty. And one thing with entrepreneurship, as you know, with uncertainty, ups and downs, emotional dips, highs and lows, those are things that are very difficult as an entrepreneur, because that's what you navigate. You navigate uncertainty. And I think trauma has helped me navigate it and find my meaning in it. Because going through this experience, I've realized I never want to ever do something like that again. I never want to hurt another in that way. I never want to disrespect myself, most of all. Meaning, if I'm going to build this business, if I'm going to help people, if I'm going to go out in the world and attempt to do good, then I want to stick by my words. Meaning, my why has become so much bigger. But do you need it to succeed? Hell no.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
I mean, shifting gears a little bit, because I think
go ahead.
We talk a lot about the kind of like negative part, and I think that it's super important, but also I think there's like the positive part as well, and I think that's where you are today. I think you started a company which is called Imminence, when was then the moment kind of from all this hardship and all the difficulties that you kind of started to build it up? I mean, you worked as a creative director for several positions. You worked in startups. You kind of started getting back kind of like really into the grind, into working out, respecting yourself, philosophy, stoicism, all the good things, and basically putting it back to yourself. When was then the moment that you were like, okay, I think I'm ready to kind of like start a business, like really become an entrepreneur?
So that's a fun one. I think it's funny how you frame it as I'm ready, right? I feel like this has all, and maybe it's going to sound a bit fluffy, but I feel like this has been one gigantic test. Because I told the world as a 4-year-old, I'm going to come and I'm going to conquer you and I'm going to do good one day. And I like to look at it in a way whereby, okay, you want to go and do that? You want to make a change? Let's see if you're capable of dealing with difficulty. I like to frame myself. And when I read, I have this practice called the Alchemy of Self. That's one thing that really helped me. I'm going a bit sidetracking here to give a bit of context, by the way, to the point. But every day and every morning, 20 minutes long, I would read out loud to myself who I am, defined word by word, not by achievements, but by who I truly believe I am. And I start the sentence with, I'm Vincent Hu. I'm an emperor building an abundant, harmonious, and virtuous empire, and honest empire. I start with emperor. Because if I tell myself I am so, then I have to act like one. And so if I tell to the world that that is who I am becoming, then okay, let's see if you can face it. So I like to think that all these events have led to me coming to this point where I am given a shit ton of responsibility. What do emperors do? It's not that they're just a leader and they're chilling in their household. They have to take care of a gigantic state of humans. They have to be so sound in their mind and decisions, one of the hardest challenges of the world. And unironically, I've been asking for that my whole life, I think. So all of this led up to these challenges that prepared me. And so it was around after I graduated from my bachelor's from business school that I went, what the fuck am I going to do now? So I had a year where I had a gap year, or like a gap year after studying here. Everyone has that, right? I thought to myself, what am I going to do? Am I really going to go back to working? But also after the entire experience I had, I was like, there's no one in the world who can tell me how to live, man. Like after all this stuff and after going so deep within myself, looking for meaning in life, I eventually said, okay, fuck it, I'm going to give it a try again. So I picked up my camera, started freelancing, started growing. I eventually, like you said, I worked as a business developer for this one company, which was completely off what I wanted to do, but I learned from it. Then I was freelancing for a while as a photographer, videographer for an agency here. Eventually, I became creative director. I got the role. It was a lot of fun, but it didn't feel like very fulfilling to me. Something lacked. A feeling of maybe even agency, accountability for my true self and taking lead the way that I always knew I should have. And so that built up to a point where it was too much to bear, too much to not see myself live up to my potential, too much to have all these tattoos, all these scriptures, contracts to myself, as I like to frame it, on my body saying I'm going to do better and not actually acting on it. That I said, fuck it. So October 17th, 2023, I quit my job. I just said, fuck it, I'm done. And that's how Imminence was born. Back then, I had a really good friend who is unfortunately moved back to Suriname, but we had this idea of like starting a agency. That's how it always goes. And one day I just came up on the name Imminence. What does that even mean? In fact, it's a metal band, funny enough. Like I say, metal is one of my favorite music genres. But I was like, damn it, someone already took that name. But Imminence has as meaning an event or occurrence that is about to take place. My whole life, it all made sense. I felt so connected to that sentence. All my life, I felt like this journey is about to take place. On September, actually a few months before that, I was on a solo trip in Portugal. And I literally looked up at the sky. I said, fuck it, you know what, world? I've been getting all these challenges, all these things happen. Why don't you just show me what I need to do?
And then from that moment, you started your business, you went on a solo trip?
I actually, that was before the business started.
Yeah.
So I quit, I started my business, and it all completely fucking flopped. Yeah. I had this idea of an unlimited design business where it's like, I don't know if you saw the trend back then, but then all these people would be like on Product Hunt. There was this guy, what's his name again? It wasn't Eastlow, that was a Notion guy. Productize yourself. I think it was the name of the guy. And he had this teaching you how you could start your own unlimited design agency. And I was super into design. I had decided my own tattoos. I was like, okay, I'm going to do something creative because I'm very creative. That flopped. No, the biggest reason I'm not surprised, I had good skills, but I couldn't land in the market. No one knew I existed. So with my friend who I did that back then, business partner, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. What is the one thing I was always good at? Marketing, content, creativity. Ooh, why don't I just go solo? So on February, I said, fuck it. February 2024, that was a year and a few months ago. I said, fuck it. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And then it obviously was quite difficult, but I ended up investing, I think, $7,000 or $8,000 in mentorship because I was so fed up by the idea of going in circles. What if I seriously put stakes to myself? Finally, give it a go. And that went pretty well.
Yeah.
I started that off in March 11, 2024. I grew rapid. I think I hit my first $10,000 month around June.
When was was there like a moment, was it then like June that you kind of understood like you're really sitting on something? Like, you know, I mean, once the you know, I mean, you started as well from zero, right?
Yeah.
Then once the first money comes to the bank account and you see it and you're like, whoa, like was there a moment like this that you were like, I can really build this out? Or
it took a long time actually. So how it went March, I just completely zoned the fuck in. I said, I'm gonna make it work. I don't care. Like there was no doubt, but at the same time, I was filled with doubt. I don't know if you know what I mean by this. Like you're an entrepreneur too, you get it. You're like, oh, I can totally do this. And in the back of your head, like, how can I do it? Am I good enough? Am I good enough? No, I was dealing with that past trauma. So actually in my experience, I was dealing with so much scarcity in my life that until unironically February this year, I didn't experience it. In fact, I'll be really honest with you. I still don't fully understand what it means when I tell you I'm running a business that's doing between $30,000 $50,000 a month. I don't understand it because how do you quantify that number? But if I can answer truthfully around building it up, seeing the change I'm making in other people's lives, seeing how I'm impacting others, and finally looking back at that mirror going, okay, Vince, you're standing here now. It was actually yesterday that I reflected on it unironically and I went, wow, I'm actually super proud of what I've done. Because in this journey, when you're building, you don't know when you're going to get clients. You don't know how it's going to look like. It's like a big confusing mess. So at the one moment, you're like, hell yeah, I'm making money. I'm doing well. On the other hand, you're also like, oh, fuck, what's it going to look like in 3 months? And then you get into the spiral of thought. Yeah. But it was really around, I'd say, end of the year, December 2024 to start of this year that I really started realizing and actually accepting that I'm safe, that I'm okay, that I really made it work.
Yeah. You call yourself like a hybrid operator in the info space.
Yeah.
How can someone like imagine a day-to-day for you, like where you kind of like serve your clients and help basically coaches, creators with digital products, like scale their business massively? Like, can you maybe give a little bit like insight, like
for sure,
what you do and also how you do it in a day-to-day, maybe to break it down?
I became very fond of this space because if others could help me through it, I can help others hopefully. And so the info space, really, like I said, it's an umbrella term for businesses, coaches, consultants, creators who have some form of knowledge that they can help people with. Think of it like one of my clients, Caroline, she's a psychologist who decided, hey, you know what? The traditional way of working isn't for me. So I'm going to help people through, in this case, my program, Phoenix, which is a 3-month transformation for people going through trauma. Or another client of mine, Nicole, she's a business coach. She helps people how to launch their own business. And so within the info space, it's quite a broad place. But what I do as a hybrid operator, I think the easiest way for me to describe it is you're fairly familiar with the word agencies, businesses that deliver a certain service like social media marketing, content. As a operator or an info operator in this space, what our main specialization is really helping these coaches and creators operate their back-end business. These people typically have either a large audience or they're really good at what they do. But how do you quantify a person with an audience of a few thousand or 100,000 followers to now going, hey, I saw you on the internet, on Instagram or YouTube, and I'm gonna spend thousands of dollars on you because I want to take whatever you have. It's quite difficult. People make it a lot easier than it is because, well, it's not just real shop, buy. It never goes like that. So what we do as info operators is we partner with these businesses and we build their backend infrastructure. We optimize what I like to call their ecosystem, how they show up online, their messaging, what they say, what they really bring as value, with the goal of nurturing informing and building really good relationships, authentic relationships. Because again, if this isn't done ethically, what's the point? With their audience, so that they can truly serve them and make a difference. And so the term hybrid operator is a variation of that. Typically, as an info operator, you're offering a done-for-you service, which you take care of everything. But what I saw as I grew is there are coaches, creators, businesses that in the 1% are perfect clients to work with. They have a really good mission. They align well with me, which is so important for me because I don't want to serve people who basically just fuck around and only care about money. Sorry I said it, but then I might as well do what I did as a child. What the fuck's the point?
Yeah.
Right? And so as a hybrid operator, I can choose how I serve people based on how it best serves them. And that makes me happy. I can choose, hey, okay, you're at a point where you're maybe doing 10K a month. You already have a business. You have a proven product. You can help people, but how do we take it further in a way that makes sense? So I literally partner with them, take part of their business, and I help them scale that up. There's also coaches, and quite recently I also started offering this to other operators like myself who are at a point where their business foundations aren't perfect. They haven't scaled it up drastically. They might not have the budget to want to work with me together, or in that sense, from an operator's perspective, or they're not looking for a partner, but they are looking for the right guidance. And that's where I would mostly mentor or consult them in a done with you self-service. And then the last part of the hybrid operator model is that there's people who quite literally don't really care much for guidance together. They don't care for partnering, but they do want to learn about the systems. And so I could offer them the systems, SOPs, standard operating procedures, so that they can grow their business. And this way I can serve people while still staying true to myself.
Do you ever think of like that you're also trying to kind of compensate like things from your past, from like your kind of like earlier versions?
By doing this?
Yeah.
No, not anymore. I used to. That was until I hit December, right? I was always trying to prove that I am good enough, that young me does exist. Now the mission's just become, okay, look, Vince, nothing you can do will take back what happened or what you did. There's no way. Unless I could, do the Men in Black kind of like flashy thingy and then I forget my past and I'm like, hey, yo, what's good? I'm who again? That's the point. I think there's a very thin line in what I try to do through also being honest about it, because at one point it could become this story for, like this, oh, you're this big saint type of dude. For me, I always go back to my own intention. And that's something that unfortunately no one can experience. I hope that people, when I say this, do believe in the truth that I say. Every day I look in that mirror and I hold myself accountable to it. Am I being honest? If I'm sharing what I'm sharing for the intent to be validated or proven or for the need to make a sale, I might as well. I might as well do it because I'm doing the same thing as I did. Am I not? When I cheated, what was the whole point of it? To prove I'm worthy. So if I'm going to do the same exact thing in a different way to prove I am worthy, what the fuck is the point of it? These are the tools I use to try to keep myself grounded. Because in this space, if you grow fast, it is very easy to look around you and go, oh, I am it. But I don't ever want to get to that point, and I don't think I should. And luckily with my parents and the people around me, I hope I can stay grounded. But yeah, it's a thin line.
Yeah. What I find really interesting, like in the conversation with you, but like I think, almost every touch point I had with you, but also kind of like the conversation that we have now, everything about you, like your tattoos, the words you use, your story, your aesthetics, everything about you is like even the words that you choose is very, 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 very intentional.
Meticulously chosen, yes.
Does everything that you do need to have like meaning? Like is this, can you ever just like let go of this kind of stuff?
Red pill, blue pill, right? It's like once you've experienced something like that, how can you ever look back? So to be truthful with you, no. There's not a moment I'm trying not to be conscious. In fact, if I ever let myself go, the word isn't fear here, because I don't want to make it seem like I'm jailing myself, because I'm really enjoying this. But the thought in my head is if I ever let go, I know who's waiting behind me. I know the shadow that lives in me. I've seen him. I know my absolute worst. I cannot allow him to be out there. Because if I lose control of myself, the empire that I'm building, it just takes 1 second of ignorance of an emperor, and everything he's ever built and represents and the responsibility he bears just falls. So to that extent, yes, I'm incredibly intentional. Do I succeed at being consciously intentional at all times, even behind closed doors? No, of course not. We're humans, right? But I find it my responsibility to do so. Because after what I've been through and after what happened, it's like, if I'm going to live, I want to do it right. So I've made it a challenge to myself. What if I can be, as I say to myself, Vincent Hu as much as possible? In fact, in my own Alchemy, what I told you about, the document that I read to myself every morning, it says, nothing I do is without meaning. It's literally a sentence in there. I tell it to myself. And I find that if I live that way, I can find peace within what happened in the past too.
I think other people would maybe argue, I was 20, 21, then 22 years old. It was COVID, or I was 18 years old. I was lost. I was young. Are you not sometimes too hard on yourself?
Maybe I am. And I think oftentimes I am. But at the same time, bro, the easy question, do you respect yourself? Do you understand what I ask what is implied when I say, do you respect yourself? How can I look at myself and ask myself in the mirror, do I respect myself when I lie to myself? When I don't keep myself to my own words? When I hurt other people I know I have responsibility over? So sure, maybe it's being hard on myself, but quite honestly, I enjoy challenges and I enjoy living that way. I think the thing that I fear most in life isn't death at this point. It's, if I can frame it intentionally, it's stabbing myself in the back and every responsibility that I hold. How can I be a father and one day go, you know what? I'm just going to forget about this responsibility, child, because I'm tired of it. How can I have a business and have 7-8 people working under me who I have a responsibility towards that, hey guys, sorry, today I just feel like being a piece of shit. Fuck you all. The emotions come through in this journey, right? I have clients who I serve. I have people who are waiting for me who are reliant on my energy and giving it my all. How can I tell them, yo, I accept your money to guide you and show you an example of what's possible, but at the same time, when I'm living, I am a piece of shit. And these are thoughts I think about a lot. Am I happy with myself? Am I truly proud of who I am? Because yeah, on the one hand, I'm being hard on myself, but on the other hand, how could I ever do something great if I don't keep myself up to the standards or try to keep myself up to those standards? I don't think it's possible. Because if every time I feel down or I don't feel like it, I do some dumb stuff. And to be truthful with you, I still have those moments where it's a Sunday, I'm just going to relax. What does relaxing mean to you? Does relaxing mean suddenly forgetting all your ethics and values and doing things that don't make sense? Or does relaxing mean calming your nervous system, calming your busy mind, and enjoying something in peace without sacrificing your values? So if the answer is, are you being hard on yourself or keeping your values? No. Or if the question is, I don't think so. If the question, I know that's not your answer, that's not what you're asking me, but I'm trying to put it into perspective. If the question is, are you being hard on yourself or keeping yourself strictly to your values? No. If the question is, are you hard on yourself or beating yourself up when things go wrong? And I think that's the nuance here. I don't beat myself up anymore when things go wrong. I used to. To give you context here. Yesterday, I promised to myself, I'm going to do this, and that. And I failed. I failed miserably, in fact. I was completely distracted from it. I didn't go, you piece of shit, you. I didn't go back to that trauma. No, I said, Vince, who are you again? Remind yourself. What is an important part of who you are? Truthfulness, honesty, integrity. Good. What are you going to do from now on? In this moment, right now that you recognize you did wrong or you didn't completely act coherently, I'm going to step back into it. And I'm back to it.
Are you afraid that because I think that like what you've built, like very frankly speaking, like from the outside, I think it looks you're super hard on yourself. Because of course, like no one, including myself, like can look inside of your mind and look inside like what you've been through, right? But it looks like you're super hard on yourself. It looks like that you have not really kind of forgiven yourself still, and you're kind of very afraid to go back to that place. But on the other hand, it's also like the more rules, structures, expectations you set towards yourself to not do this and how can you, and are you not afraid, like what would happen if you would kind of slip? Would you not happen that kind of like you would completely break if you make it like such a integral part of your whole identity, like everything is tattooed, like everything is like kind of just written in there? And like what would happen if you would ever slip? Because after all, like, we're all humans and we all make mistakes,
Yeah.
right? So
No, that's a good one. I think that's a great question. And I wanna say this very intentionally here as well, because, and I can imagine why you say that as well, where it's like it seems so hard. It really isn't. I think if I can frame it, this is my personal way of coping. It's my way. I have a certain language with myself, and I don't expect everyone to have that language. It's not a requirement in life anyways. Like, if you've ever watched anime, and this is going to be a funny joke, but if you've ever watched anime, you know how the protagonist goes, I need to be better, and then they overcome this whole challenge. Quite frankly, this is how I like imagining things. So I also like framing them in that way. But let me make one thing very clear. This path isn't about self-sabotage or self-defeat. It's simply waking up and saying, hey, this is who I am. Not because I need to, not because I'm forced to, not because I have this whole retribution arc. I had that phase where I did do that for that reason, right? But because I believe that if this is who I can be, and this is how I am truly going to put myself in life, I believe good will happen out of it. Now, the standards I put for myself maybe don't seem typical, but I enjoy life that way. I don't enjoy life otherwise because it's too easy. Quite frankly, it's too easy for me. It's like if I played video games, I would have to speed run and play it at max difficulty. Otherwise, it would just be unstimulating. And I'd be like, this shit's too easy.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say here is, if I fail myself, if I make a mistake, in the past, my emotions would take over. And what would happen is I would become back into that, you're not good enough. You're a piece of shit. Now what happens is, damn it, I did something silly. And that's okay. Who are you again? Remind yourself. You're an honest human. You're good. What I'm trying to depict here is that this isn't about being necessarily strict or hard on yourself, although it may seem like that. It's about defining once and for all who you are and just staying honest to it. If I tell myself, like, I like to have these high standards, like I said, because that's how I feel like that's a good way to live life. If the standards are simply, you wake up, you do the things that you know you need to do for yourself, you don't lie to people, then that's fine. My point is, if you're going to say that's who you are, then stay it and be truthful to it. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to depict this story as if in the only way you can succeed is by going through this gigantic dark story. No, that's just how I went through it. Yeah. Because that's the only way I could make sense of it.
If you think of like the upcoming month, years, I mean, you're really, I think, in the beginning of also like your entrepreneurial journey. Do you have any kind of like milestones, goals that you would like to achieve the upcoming time, and also like what's next kind of for your company and for yourself?
I think so. I'm going to quantify it goals numbers wise, but then the only way I can make those numbers sensible is by defining who that is, who makes that work. Because I have in my philosophy, a goal is nothing other than a representation of yourself. And so my philosophy is, the more I stay true to myself, the higher I will rise in life. The more responsibilities I can take up without it causing and feeling like sacrifice. I think this is an important one to touch on real quick, because if you're a father, for example, right? Is it strict or a sacrifice to have to live like a proper father, like my father did for me? I don't think he ever complained about the fact he had to be a father, even though there were times where I was being such an annoying child. You know what I mean? I think that's also going back to the question you asked for, that I do want to emphasize. It's not necessarily about being strict. It's about saying, hey, this is who I am and this is the responsibility I take. I do it willingly and gladly, instead of this whole resistance, because in order to hit 10K months, I have to do outreach and do my videos. No, I'm going to be a 10K a month entrepreneur. So I'm just going to show up and do those things because that's who I am. So anyway, back to where I want to go. June is going to be a 50K month. I'm fairly certain with this structure, but also because I truly show up like that every day. And I know that if I keep myself to it, how could I not serve more people and help them? But at the same time, for the business, I haven't really defined a number in the next year or two. Like, I know that I will drastically keep growing. I think the potential is to hit 75K with the hybrid operating business in the next 6 months, potentially even 100. Thing is, it's so expansive that I don't actually realize the scale of what's possible. But the one thing that does matter to me is who I represent. So for me, that means being intentional with the clients I work with, truly creating the best ever program and service that I can possibly fathom in my own mind. Because otherwise, I'm not really serving people now, am I? For me, I think one of the things I do want to do is start a family of children. Maybe not in the next 3 years, but probably the next 5-10 years. And quite honestly, if I can say the ultimate goal for me, I always frame it like I am the physical embodiment of growth. That's how I would present myself in my own head. So I just want to show the world what's possible when you say who you're going to be and stick to it and just reach the outer limit for it. And I know that if I do that truthfully, that I'll make some pretty cool things happen and help a lot of people. I'd say that's the most rough way of saying it.
Cool. Really nice goals. And I have no doubt hearing you today that you will also reach those goals. Before we leave off, I always have 3 final questions to every single guest. And I'm also going to ask it to you. What's something that you're learning right now that you're not good at?
Being a good human, unironically. I think in a lot of ways I'm a great person, but in a lot of ways I have shortcomings. As a boyfriend, as a son, as a brother, I'm going to say that I suck at it, not because I'm actually bad, because I can improve so much. I've grown fast as an entrepreneur, but I've not placed as much time in my personal life. And that's one thing that I do want to improve, because how can I say I'm an emperor when I can't even keep the people I love most happy all the time? Not that happiness is the definition of it, but I think those are things I'm working on right now. And it's fun, right? Because on the one hand, you grow drastically as an entrepreneur, and then you have to carry up yourself. So it's always this world of things. Will I consider that I suck at things always? Probably, yes. Because it keeps me very grounded. I'm like, I'm not good at this, but at the same time, I'm the best I can be. So it's like this constant battle of things.
Nice. What name would you give this chapter of your life?
Imminence.
Imminence. And if you could send a SMS to all mobile phones in the world, what would you say?
Just do good.
Just do good.
Yeah.
Beautiful words, also beautiful words
Just
to
do
end
good.
the podcast episode.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your openness, for your transparency in your personal life, but also in your business life. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I think we met like today a very inspiring founder with a lot of different facets and layers and a lot of depth and width, which was very, very inspiring to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your openness. And if you want to shout out your channels, how the people can find you before we end the episode.
Of course. Thank you for having me here as a guest. It's a pleasure to be here and to share this story honestly. And I hope everyone at the end of the day could learn from it. I think that's the most important part. I just want to preface this before I share my socials and go follow me. Don't follow me because I seem like this cool dude. Don't follow me because of any artificial reasons. I just want to share my truth with the world, because I believe that if I live my truth, I can serve. And so I hope you all learn from it. But you can find me on Instagram. I am Vincent Hu. That's Hu. 2 letters. That's my family name. And on YouTube as well. I'm Vincent Hu, where I typically share my journey. And on YouTube, I'm going to unpack a lot more behind the scenes of what I do and how I help people. So thanks, man.
Awesome. We're also going to link, of course, the names in the show notes, but also you should them hopefully see on the screen. For you, now it's time to say goodbye to the 301 podcast episode again. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting the episode. We have still the issue that over 80% of the people that listen to this episode are not subscribed. So if you're seeing this right now, go hit that subscribe button, because if you are subscribing, we can grow the show, bring more guests, bring cooler guests, even though that's difficult to top today. But we keep on growing and we keep on creating content. Thank you so much for listening. And this was the 301 podcast.